forecasting that there'll be software stores just like there are record stores today, and that there'll be thousands and thousands of those. And I think I'd have to agree with that.
And during an interview he does for the first ever edition of PC Magazine, his prediction for the next 5 years of computers is bold. Bold, bordering between unlikely and pure fantasy. He says, we'll be able to put on somebody's desk for an incredibly low cost a processor with more capability than you could ever use. In other words, we will have changed the way people work. The office of the future will be the office of the present 5 years from today.
Eventually what will happen is that everyone will have a personal computer on their desk. We really believe that a personal computer will be valuable for everyone. We also believe that eventually it'll be worthwhile to have one in the home, but that's going to take a lot longer to make come true.
He believes that computers are the future, and he illustrates this with this one mantra that he says over and over and over: a computer on every desk and in every home.
Well, I think we will get one in every office, in every home. Exciting vision of a machine on every desktop. I have no doubt that that vision of a computer in every home, that'll absolutely be achieved.
And we know today that that dream kind of did come true. When I look around at all the computers on my desk, I have my monitor, which is technically a computer. I have my Mac desktop. I have my iPhone. This is a computer. I have my camera. This is also a computer. I'm filming on a camera right now. I have AirPods, which is a computer.
This is a different panel than I've had. Everything's a computer. That's beautiful. Wow.
You get my point. But at the time, no one else agrees with him at all. Ken Olsen, who's the founder of one of the biggest computer companies of the 1960s, whose computers cost $25,000 and weighed more than a refrigerator, famously said, "There's no reason for any individual to have a computer in his home." And that was basically the prevailing sentiment at the time. But Bill Gates and his team are willing to do whatever it will take to make his vision of the future come true. And famously, there was one part of their mission statement they would sometimes leave out: a computer on every desk and in every home running Microsoft software. Right now, though, Microsoft's most important invention is about to be a word that, unlike their 16-bit single-user, single-tasking operating system, we still say today. The word is vaporware.
Vaporware.
Vaporware is when a company announces a new product, promises a release date, generates headlines and excitement, and runs marketing campaigns, and then what they do come out with is far too little and far too late. Sometimes vaporware never comes out at all. Tesla announced the Roadster 2 in 2017, a bleeding-edge electric sports car that would be faster and cooler than anything ever made, but 9 years later, it still doesn't exist. Theranos was a startup that was founded on the promise of devices that could run hundreds of medical tests from one drop of blood. They raised almost $1 billion from investors, although it was eventually revealed that the underlying concept was actually medically impossible, and its youngest self-made woman billionaire founder was sent to prison for fraud, where she remains to this day. My point is that vaporware describes everything our society has come to hate about modern tech and modern capitalism: unfinished or dishonest products, marketing without substance, and the general enshittification of everything we consume. But I'm not saying that they were the first ones to do vaporware and someone else made the word to describe them. They literally invented the word vaporware inside the company to describe how they were going to control and dominate the tech industry in the early 80s. At the end of 1983, Microsoft held a massive announcement at the Grand Historic Plaza Hotel in New York City, unveiling their brand new graphical operating system Windows with Flash and Pizzazz, and a promise that this groundbreaking software would release in just 6 months.
The retail package of Microsoft Windows. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's here.
However, they weren't the first to the punch. VisiCorp, a company from Boston, already had an operating system for sale in 1982, and it was one of the first modern operating systems as we know it, with a mouse for controlling the interface and multitasking apps, blah blah blah. You get what I mean. It was more powerful and modern than anything that Microsoft had done yet, and with VisiCorp's yearly revenue being 15 times higher than Microsoft at the time, their success was apparent. When Windows was announced, though, with so many promises and such bombastic fanfare, enough PC manufacturers signed on to include Windows on their new machines that VisiCorp sales declined massively. Meanwhile, when the spring of 1983 rolls around, Windows 1.0 is nowhere to be found. It won't actually be released for another 20 months, or more than 2 years after it was first announced. At this point, magazine editors started saying stuff like, buyers believe in Microsoft release dates with the same fervor that they believe in Santa Claus. In the end, by the time Windows was actually released, VisiCorp had gone completely bankrupt. They weren't the only one either. The Windows release debacle killed a whole category of companies. GEM, DeskView, Software Arts, these were all pretty big software companies back in the day, and they were all destroyed by the announcement of Windows looking bigger and better than anything they had made. In reality though, Microsoft had strangled their competitors to death with software that didn't even exist, and I mean that literally. During all the time when Windows was not out yet, when the rest of the industry stopped buying other programs in anticipation of what Microsoft might make, it turned out that Windows did not really exist. What they had announced in reality was a couple of screenshots that they had not even yet started making work.
We got a calendar program that uses the graphical interface, we got a card file, we got a terminal program.
But at least Microsoft Windows 1.0 was groundbreaking, right? Well, not really. Windows 1.0 actually got terrible reviews. Journalists called it clunky, magazines wrote that the entire thing was running off floppy disks that felt like pouring molasses in the Arctic, and one magazine scored it a 4 out of 10. And ultimately, while their pre-orders were high with all the marketing they had done, Windows ended up selling less than 500,000 copies in the first 2 years. Even in the early days of personal computers, that was a flop. But for all their failures, dishonesty, and lies, they were only rewarded with a bigger, better profile than ever before and a list of competitors who had literally gone out of business in the meantime. They had won the race, even though they were cheating. In all of this, the lies, the strangulation, it was only the beginning. For the next 20 years, Bill Gates and Microsoft would change the world by building the most powerful and the most hated company in the history of American business. It's 1985. Microsoft has grown to almost but not quite 1,000 employees. They outgrew their bland beige 2-story suburban office building, and by that I mean they expanded to occupy 4 more, all still on the same street in between Burgermaster and La Quinta, and a strangely high number of dental clinics. Bill Gates is now 29 years old. He still wears odd sweaters and huge glasses and kind of looks like a kid. The media still seems to not entirely know what to make of him. In one profile for Fortune magazine, he's called the Rabid Rabbit, a gawky, bookish nerd who is intensely competitive and aloof and sarcastic. One interview described his fashion sense at work as pizza-stained t-shirts that make clients mistake him for the office boy. All the same though, he's now worth around $100 million.
We're expecting to do just over $100 million this year.
Although when CNBC runs his first major TV interview, he proudly declares that he isn't in it for the money.
I don't think anyone at the company is in it for the money. Creation of these programs is something you can sit down and see people enjoying and solving real problems.
If you had stayed at home.
His profile has increased, no doubt, but the general public is still largely unaware or unable to understand why Bill Gates matters so much. At the same time, though, he just keeps telling the same story about what Microsoft is and what it's going to be. Famously, at one computer conference, one of his competitors says, "Bill works so much harder than us. He's going to succeed. We may as well just give in." Whether or not that was said to be funny or with a twinge of genuine fear, either way, people were starting to wonder just how far this kid will go to win. Still though, Bill Gates is far from achieving his true goal of computers on every desk and in every home. But 3,000 miles east of their quiet, boring headquarters in suburban Seattle sits another boring headquarters in suburban New York, where IBM, International Business Machines, or as it's sometimes referred to, Big Blue, calls home. And Big Blue is a company that represents the status Bill Gates wants to achieve but doesn't yet have. For every one employee at Microsoft, IBM has 400. 400,000 people work there. IBM computers run America's banks, airlines, the federal government, and NASA. They are the computer company. They make $30 billion every year, and they want to hire Microsoft, whose programmers wear t-shirts and sandals to work, to build them the operating system of the future. Bill Gates is 29, and he's being handed the keys to become the biggest software company in the world. It's the opportunity a wife. First of all was that obviously Microsoft already had Windows, their main operating system, but officially the Windows brand was actually set to be retired once OS/2, the collaboration between IBM and Microsoft, was finally ready.
MS-DOS is our single most profitable product. It'll be replaced by OS/2, the next generation, over the next 2 or 3 years. You asked, do I worry about something? Yeah, I worry about OS/2 being a well-received product, but
In reality, though, about 3 years into the development of OS/2 with IBM, Microsoft hires Dave Cutler, one of the greatest operating system architects in the world, and puts him in a separate building with about a dozen people to help him and one instruction: build a brand new operating system from scratch that Microsoft owns outright. And his only condition for taking this job is that he would never be seen by or speak to anybody from IBM. And so in the end, in May of 1990, just a little while after OS/2 finally launched, Microsoft alone launches Windows 3.0 at a multi-million-dollar event in New York City.
Today we're introducing Microsoft Windows version 3.
It sells 1 million copies in 4 months, 15 million within a year. Reviewers called it groundbreaking. PC Magazine writes that May of 1990 marks the beginning of a new era for computers. Microsoft had tricked IBM into paying them to design their own downfall. By the time January of 1993 rolled around, IBM announced an annual loss of $8 billion the year before, the largest single-year corporate loss in American history. Their company would never be the same again. At a pivotal moment when the future of computers was being decided, Microsoft had tricked them into ruining their own future. IBM still exists today, but they never recovered the position they had in the middle of the 80s. Within 5 years of releasing OS/2, they ended up laying off 100,000 employees, and today they deal mainly in computing for large businesses, and most people don't even know they exist anymore at all. The press at the time called the partnership between Microsoft and IBM a wedding. In reality, it was a heist. OS/2 was ultimately quickly forgotten because it just wasn't that good. But Windows 3, the project that Microsoft had used the money IBM had given them to develop OS/2 to actually make, it was pretty groundbreaking. It didn't suck, it had real graphics, overlapping windows, it was kind of modern. It's just that it only existed because Bill Gates had spent the last 5 years sabotaging and hiding the truth from the partner who was paying his bills. The point is, though, that now that Microsoft had all the leverage in the world, they were only going to keep using it to hold the entire computer industry hostage. It's 1994. Microsoft now employs more than 50,000 people. Their campus grows bigger and bigger as they build new facilities and hire thousands with each passing year.
Based in Redmond, Washington, Microsoft employs thousands of people worldwide. The company operates on a vision of a computer on every desk, in every home, running Microsoft software.
They recently moved to take over a gigantic plot of land that used to be a chicken farm. Bill Gates is now 37, although he kind of still looks like a kid. He still wears the same goofy sweaters and glasses, but really, that's about the only thing that stayed the same. He recently got married on the Hawaiian island of Lanai in a private ceremony on New Year's Day where he paid Willie Nelson to play the hits for the reception and chartered every single helicopter in Hawaii for his guests. And in the last couple years, Microsoft went public, which made him the youngest self-made billionaire in American history. He's now the richest man in the US overall, and will soon be the richest man in the world. Microsoft is also thriving. The dream of a computer on every desk and in every home, it's coming true. By the end of 1994, there are almost 60 million personal computers in the US. 54 million of them are running on Microsoft Windows. The company has, in 15 years, gone from designing a flop operating system that only sold 200,000 copies from a 2-story office in between a burger restaurant and a dental clinic to designing the interface of modern life. Their stock is up 5,000%. They are the most successful software company ever. Word, Excel, and PowerPoint are used by every accountant, secretary, and student in America. Bill Gates has been invited to the White House, profiled in 60 Minutes, and graced the cover of Time, Newsweek, Fortune, and Forbes, all multiple times. He's the great American success story of the late 20th century. Microsoft is soon going to be the most valuable company in America. It will also be the most hated, and Bill Gates will be at the center of all of it. Microsoft recently lost a trial to a small California company called Stack Electronics for having stolen patented code from them. They were ordered to pay a $120 million restitution. They then turned around and did it again. They were then found to have embedded a piece of encrypted code inside Windows that did nothing but make a competitor's program crash. After they were exposed, they put it back. At the same time, though, Windows has crossed 90% market share. It is practically the only computer operating system in the industry. And so in the mid-90s, the only part of the tech industry that Microsoft doesn't totally control is actual physical computers. The actual physical machines, keyboards, monitors, beige plastic boxes, processors, RAM, They don't make those. Computers are built by Compaq, Dell, IBM, HP, Toshiba, but Microsoft is going to find a way to dominate them anyway, because if you want to sell a computer with Windows on it, you have to pay Microsoft a royalty, which is fair enough. But the contract Microsoft offered, called a per-processor license, requires that you pay that royalty on every computer you sell. Not every Windows computer, but every computer, whether Windows is on it or not. That's how powerful Microsoft was. They could force you to pay a portion of every sale you make just for the right to use their software at all. And in late 1995, when Compaq, the largest PC maker at the time, removed the Internet Explorer icon from their default desktop setup, Microsoft sent them a letter of intent to terminate licensing. Simply put, if they didn't put the Internet Explorer icon back, they would no longer be able to sell Windows at all. And Compaq, even though they were the biggest computer company on the planet, had no choice. Within 2 weeks, they put the Internet Explorer icon back on the desktop. By the middle of the 90s, Microsoft's market share, in fact, passed 96%. Every computer on every desk in every home was a Microsoft PC, not by choice, but by force. It's now 1998, and Microsoft employs 30,000 people. The company is worth around $600 billion. It is the most valuable company in the world. The Microsoft campus has grown to more than 40 buildings. Windows market share is, again, over 95%. They own the computer industry. Microsoft has become so big that they reshaped the economy and culture of the Seattle area, driving high real estate prices and development throughout the entire region. Microsoft employees are known as Microsoft millionaires, with more than 15,000 employees at the time becoming millionaires from the stock options they receive at work. They recently founded a magazine, Slate Magazine, and they established an American cable news channel called MSNBC. Yes, the MS in MSNBC stands for Microsoft. Bill Gates is now 42 years old. He still wears the sweaters and he still looks kind of young. His net worth is more than $60 billion. He is worth more than the entire GDP of the country of New Zealand. And at this point, America has finally figured out exactly what to make of Bill Gates. In the comic strip Doonesbury, he's a recurring villain who offers people money to stop competing with him. One website goes viral for being dedicated to displaying how much wealth he accumulates every minute of every hour of every day. He's ridiculed and mocked on Saturday Night Live. The Onion dedicates pages and pages to making fun of him. There are books, think pieces, and documentaries all about Microsoft's aggressive, unethical business practices. Time magazine, who once proudly featured him on the cover as the future of American business, calls him a monopolist. Business Week publishes an article titled Bill Gates, Robber Baron. The front page of the Wall Street Journal says Bill Gates enjoys monopoly power that even John D. Rockefeller could envy. At one point, a man hides in a corner and hits him in the face with a pie. Eventually, even Hollywood makes a movie about him, cast, of course, as the villain. In the film, he screams at employees, steals from Steve Jobs, and famously says,
"You make people need you. You survive because you make them need what you have. And then they have nowhere else to go."
The world wanted to know why Bill Gates was the way he was. His mind, his ambition, it became the central focus of Microsoft's rise to power and control. He wasn't just another CEO. He represented everything wrong with American greed in a way that people wanted to understand. And there was one thing in particular that seemed to make it all make sense. Cornering Compaq, destroying IBM from within, turning Microsoft into the biggest company in America by lying, cheating, and stealing. To understand Bill Gates, the kind of person he is, what makes him tick, we need to understand what he did to Paul Allen. And to do that, we need to go back in time and start from the very beginning. It's the mid-1960s, and Bill Gates is growing up in a large house in a quiet neighborhood in Seattle. His parents are young, both in their 20s, although his father is already a successful corporate lawyer and soon to be president of the Washington State Bar Association. His mother is the granddaughter of an early 1900s West Coast banking president.